This is Voice of Republicans TV, where you hear Republicans talking about the issues you care about.
Welcome, everyone, to Voice of Republicans TV, where we bring you politicians, activists, party leaders, and candidates straight to you with no slant. Please like and subscribe to all of our social media so you never miss an episode and get every Voice of Republicans TV update. We're here first today with Darren Fernandez. He is the first young Republican to start a club in Howard County, Maryland, where he is the founder and president of the Howard County Young Republicans.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Darren, it's good to see you. I know with the pandemic, things are kind of crazy. So I'll start tonight. So I just wanted to say, obviously, yes, it's great to see you. I know we've been chatting over the pandemic about your chapter and the things that you've been able to do. But for everyone that's watching that might not be familiar with Young Republicans, or with your chapter in particular, could you just kind of, let everyone know, about your chapter and then what you've been up to? I know you've been working on supportive education races, so maybe filling in some of our viewers on what you've been doing with that without have to get too specific. But
Yeah, not a problem. So we're a relatively young group, a little under a year old now. We've grown in membership some, but because of the pandemic and people are moving, it ebbs and flows, and it's particularly hard in our county because it's the county's it's trending blue. So we have our issues, but we're doing a lot of work with candidates, the board of ed races, and some congressional candidates as well. And we try to stay involved with the Maryland Young Republicans, our mother organization, as much as we can, and really try to hopefully turn the state turn the state red, going back to our principles.
Darren, I'll just jump in. And, when you guys started off, there was nothing there before. There was no sort of infrastructure, nothing you could just sort of revive. You had to start from scratch, basically, with your club. Talk us through that. Talk our viewers through that experience, just starting up with basically having to start from nothing. The good thing is you could sort of build it up how you wanted it to be. You didn't have to take over something that didn't really work, but there had to have been some struggles there too with just having nothing to build off of. So could you talk through that a little?
Absolutely. So when I first moved to Howard County, there weren't any real young Republican groups. There were, of course, the Republican Club, and of course the Central Committee, but they're very limited in what they can do, and they're not really for lack of better terms, like we are more up to date on technology and how to use that and how to leverage technology to really get our message out there. So I reached out to Maria because I looked on the Maryland Young Republican website and said, "Oh, wow, there's not a group in Howard County." And from there, I asked if we can start one, and with a lot of help and support from the Maryland Young Republicans, we grew. We got our name out there. People started to take interest in all the work what we're doing. Candidates started reaching out because they were seeing that the things that we're doing makes a difference in their campaigns, and we continue to grow. We have some growing pains, of course, because membership ebbs and flows, but that's, I think, with any young organization, as long as you have a good foundation, you can keep going. And that's really it, really. And then I guess, in order to really start a group like this, you have to have pretty thick skin and an ability to just take the punches and roll with the punches and keep going, keep moving forward.
yeah, I remember when you filled out the form on our website, because I remember getting it, and I had just finished a phone call, actually, for an anecdote for a second. I had just finished a phone call with Evan, actually, and I had a phone call with Melissa. And as I was on the phone with Melissa, my email had dinged that you had literally filled out the form on our website, and I got super excited because when it came through, I was just talking about like chapters and growth with Melissa, and then I said, oh my gosh, I think we've got someone. So I reached out to you, and I remember getting off that phone call feeling so good about it because you and I had like a fantastic chat for, I think it was like 45 minutes, just about the Republican Party, what we could do. And for me, like you've been a great friend through everything, of course, through all this. But the reason why I bring this up is because we've seen so many Republican organizations and coalitions and groups that have tried to develop clubs and do things. I want you, if you could talk a little bit about, you obviously, we've talked a little bit about the success of the Howard County Young Republicans and what you guys have done already. But for people that are looking to build organizations or coalitions, like what I had just mentioned, do you have any advice for them? Things that like maybe could cross-pollinate and work in other situations for us to be able to build the party in different ways, not necessarily maybe a young Republican vein, but just a Republican vein in it as a whole, like a Republican path, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the biggest advice I can give is to know your community. And you have to know how to engage with the community and what strikes them, what doesn't, and you really have to know kind of the politics of the community. Yes, as Republicans, we have certain principles that we abide by, but you have to be able to communicate those principles in a way that kind of seeks into people who aren't so friendly to our set of principles and ideals, right? And that's one of the biggest advices I can give is to, all right, yes, we have our principles and ideas, and find creative ways to express it and getting people to listen, particularly here, like in purple counties, like Howard County, right? And it's trending blue. Like you have to find ways to win over some hearts that are still teetering on the brink of like, what are we going to be? Am I going to be a Democrat or Republican, right? And it's particularly hard nowadays because everything is so polarized. So it's especially important for those groups that are trying to start to be, like I said, mindful of your community and figure out ways to communicate with them without essentially starting an argument, right? And the best way to communicate somebody is to first come off as friendly, right? Be friendly with them, be in this and that, be polite, establish a relationship, and then from there you can start building. And that's kind of what we did here in Howard County. We started building relationships with our sister organizations, and then started reaching out to more of the independent folks who just said, okay, yeah, these guys are pretty reasonable, we can work with them. Like I said, like it's not so much a one size fits all, but that's the biggest advice I can give to young groups is like, know your community and know how to outreach to them.
Darren, just to follow up there, you had mentioned at the start specifically, knowing your community and how to engage them. Could you walk us through maybe like a specific example or something that you guys as young Republicans were able to engage differently than maybe even the Central Committee, some other Republican groups, but a way that being young Republicans and being on the younger end of things politically, you were able to engage in a new way that maybe broke through to people that weren't able to before?
Yeah, so what we did was we used humor to our advantage in our Facebook posts and stuff like that. And we found that clicked with a lot of people, and particularly the older crowd. And, the older crowd, although they're not as technically savvy, if they start to like you and they start to laugh, they start spreading the word. And that's how we kind of grew, is that people started liking our content. It slowed down a little bit, particularly because of COVID and, just our ability to write has slowed down because of life. But yeah, that was the biggest way we did. Is like, so we reached out to our community. We hit all the we joined as a group all the Howard County political organizations and groups, and just started having fun essentially, and not so much in a rude way, but kind of satirical and oh, as a matter of fact type things, like, oh, because of this and this and this, and we joke about something, and people would actually start to start thinking about their positions. For example, one person actually reached out, was like, you know what, we never actually thought of it that way. I thought this was satirical at first, but then I really started to think, and their minds kind of changed because of the way we presented that information to them, right? Because it was so, in Howard County, particularly with the Board of Education races, everything was so heated. And the moment we brought some humor into things, it loosened people up in a way. They were more willing to respond to our message. So that's one example of knowing your community and knowing the issues in your community and how to effectively communicate with them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you guys in Howard County do such a good job of kind of bridging that gap, like with those organizations that we've talked about. You guys have your women's Federation Club, your Central Committee, your Republican Club. You guys have all these like other little factions. However, one of the things that I do love about it is there is such a mutual respect that they have for you guys. Like, you came in there the way you did, professional. You had a great kickoff, because I was there, Evan was there, I remember. And I remember, seeing a couple people that were there that weren't young Republicans, but they just wanted to be there to support you guys. And they, a couple people said to me, they're like, this is great. Like, we're really excited about this. And everyone was very warm and open to wanting a young Republicans club. And I think that really does help too, to an extent, because when you have people that like want you involved, and like, I know you guys are in the Howard County Young Republicans, you are very welcoming to your members. And I think that really does go a long way, because oftentimes in the Republican Party, unfortunately, at the local level, we can see it get super cliquey and super, like, it can get really heated and divisive. And what I love about with your chapter in particular is you don't really have that within your chapter. You all are satirical and you use that content. So Darren, if you want to just talk a little bit about how kind of the precedent that you wanted to set when you went in there to build your chapter, the kind of organization that you wanted, talk a little bit about how you did that. How did you establish that to set a tone, if you will?
So again, that goes back to knowing your community, and it's unfortunate in a way that the media has painted Republicans as a certain type of person, and we wanted to change that, right? We wanted to be known as the friendly people that you can joke around with and grab a beer with, right? And that really seemed to resonate. So that's essentially what we did, and the people that join us are essentially the same type of people. We just want to have a good time, and first and foremost, we're kind of the face of the Maryland Young Republicans in Howard County, and we want to make a good impression, right? Because first and foremost, even though we're the Howard County Young Republicans, we're still Maryland Young Republicans and part of the Republican Party, and we need to, in order to help change the narrative, we got to show people a different side of us, and that's what we kind of dedicated ourselves to. So we're very picky on sort of the issues that we kind of chime in on, and what not to chime in on, just because, like I said, our community is very finicky and they can turn on you in a second. So that's some of the reason why we were kind of slowed down a little bit in this time in Howard County in terms of posting things in Howard County, is because there's some issues that we just don't want to touch on, because it's going to it's going to kill the brand essentially if we do it. And it's not that we're not passionate about it, but we're like, again, the first and foremost, it's about the brand for us and making sure that we have a good reputation here in our community, in the state, and nationally, if ever we get there as a county. But but the state group's doing a great job at that. So.
Darren, last question I have, because you touched on something very important earlier that happens to every young Republican club I've ever seen or been around or saw. You mentioned how life gets in the way and things go up and down and more and less activity, because outside of this, you have a life, you have a family, you have other things, and things that actually pay you and pay your bills that need to be focused on sometimes, other than just the volunteer stuff. So if you could give some advice that maybe how you've found that balance, or how you're still looking to find that balance that other young Republicans or potential young Republicans and people that come along in the future could find a way to that, so they don't get burnt out and they don't leave the organization completely, but they can always sort of stay right there, never get too high or too low, or commit too much time or not enough time, but they can balance that aspect of, this is a volunteer organization. This is asking strictly for your free time where you can be doing anything with. How do you keep that balance and make sure that you never really get too burnt out of the organization while not letting the rest of your life slip by also?
That's a great question, because I'm actually still trying to find that balance for me, particularly with, my job and the baby to come. So finding that balance is tough, but before then, it's great to have a great supporting cast. And if you don't have that, just keep on keeping on, right? It's going to get tough. If you need to step away for a quick second, all I got to say is do it, refresh yourself, and then get back in it, right? Because there's no point in doing something 50%. You have to do it 100% all the time. And people kind of feed off that energy that you have. So if you need to take a break, do it. And that's what we've told all our members here in Howard County, is like, if you need to take a break, do it. There's no pressure to do anything. You're free to come and go as you please, and feel free to chime in whenever you like. And thankfully, like, people have stuck around with us so far. And again, like I said, it also helps that we're very picky in what we chime in on, too, as to not burn our members out, right, and to not kind of scare some of the more middle of the fence, like people who aren't quite sure if they're Republican or not, but kind of aligned with our ideals and principles, and not to scare them off as well, because we want to be an inclusive group, and really show, okay, this is what the Republican Party can do for the community, and this is how we can all prosper together because of these certain ideals that all Republicans kind of abide by. And it's a lot of work, and if you feel getting burnt out, take a break or talk to somebody. Talk to Evan or Maria. They always have a good. They're always pretty good about re-energizing me when I get down. Jason too, and just take advantage of the network you have as a young Republican. There's a great group of people here in the state, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. So take a break when you need to, and lean on people when you need to, because people are always willing to give you a hand, and especially if you need a little breather or a pick me up. So great time.
No, that's awesome, Darren. I know it's so funny, I mean, we talk about it all the time, how we're a family. And I think it's really important because, you can talk about it in terms of your close family or, your cousins or however you want to describe it. But, we all have our own families, but why our family is very important. I know it's important to me because it kind of fills a different kind of void in your life because, like in family, we fight sometimes if we have disagreements, but at the end of the day, like, we support each other. And I think we really do care about each other. And that's so important to kind of cultivate that culture. And it's something that I pride myself in. I know Evan does as well. And, but, as I know we're winding down a little bit here with you, but if you want to just talk about, what are you looking forward to? What are you guys going to be working towards? I know, we talked about the elections in November, sure, but long term, where do you want to see the organization, whether it's in the next 6 months or the next year or whatever? Like, where do you want to see it? What ultimately do you want the young Republicans to turn into? Whether are you trying to create candidates, party leadership, central committee? Like, what's kind of what do you want to facilitate and kind of affect and change?
I think the way we saw our group is that we want to be kind of the leaders of the Republican Party and kind of in Howard County, and kind of cultivate that, recruit great members and get them on the central committee, get them on the club, become officers of the club, and it's a slow process. I don't expect things to turn over in a year or two. So our 5-year plan for a long, I'm pretty sure we're going to be around then, is that, I hope to maybe quadruple our membership, eventually start a due structure that people can afford, and, continue to be engaged in the community and essentially drive the narrative here in Howard County. And so that's where I see us going, and from now and into the future. And hopefully we have the Maryland, I know we do, but have the Maryland Young Republicans supporting all this, and hope everyone still has faith in us, even though we've been down these past couple months.
Well, Darren, just from my perspective, you guys are crushing it in a county that it's a lot tougher than maybe it used to be for you. But with you guys there, you're gonna slow that tide down and turn it back the other way. Everything can change a lot just within 1 or 2 election cycles. So it's good that you guys are there and in place and working towards a better future for Howard County. As we wrap up here, is there any final thoughts, final things you want to say? I know you're a very busy man and a soon-to-be father, so congratulations on that as well. But any last things you want to say before we head out here?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a young Republican here in Howard County, please feel free to reach out to us. We have, of course, eyes on November, and then again for the county executive spot, which I hope we can take over, and that's the goal. So if you're out there, come contact us. We'd love to work with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Darren, for joining us here on Voice of Republicans TV. Everyone, you heard Darren. If you are a young Republican, or you know a young Republican, or you will one day be a young Republican, or you just want to support young Republicans in Howard County, Maryland, Darren Fernandez is your guy. So don't hesitate. Reach out to him. And we're going to roll right through November. Thanks again, Darren, for joining us. And we will be right back with Senator Johnny Ray Salling.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Later, everyone.
Thanks. All right, welcome back to Voice of Republicans TV. We are now joined by Maryland State Senator, and you heard it here first, future Congressman, Senator Johnny Ray Salling.
Yeah.
Johnny Salling is a lifelong resident of Baltimore County. Growing up in a working class home, he learned quickly that the value of honesty and hard work. After graduating from Sparrows Point High School in Dundalk, Johnny joined the United States Army and served as a combat engineer. In 2014, Johnny was elected to the Maryland State Senate for the 6th District, representing the citizens of Dundalk, Essex, and Rosedale in Annapolis.
Thank you.
Senator Salling, thank you for joining us tonight. Let's jump right into it. The Black Lives Matter movement has brought policing and funding of police departments into the national spotlight. Cities like Portland are now having federal agents protecting buildings that are being vandalized, being attacked. Over the weekend, President Trump said that he will deploy federal agents to Baltimore. State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has said that if that happens, she will prosecute all federal agents involved. Does the state's attorney have the right, let alone the jurisdiction, to prosecute federal agents while they are protecting federal property? What's your stance from the Maryland legislative side?
I believe that is a very foolish statement for her to say. More than anything, the president has the right to do that. He has the ability, but he has the right to do that as the president of the United States. All he's trying to do is what he's been doing. He's trying to protect the federal courthouses and areas in the federal system that they are in all of our nation, throughout our nation and states. And he has every right to do that because they are federal. They are not state. And the thing is, they need to realize that in our cities, in our states, and our counties, that through the federal government, the president have the right to protect areas that are federal.
Yeah, which leads me to my question, Senator Salling. So there's obviously been talk, the Democrats are talking about, defunding the police or reorganizing police departments. Do you believe we should be defunding the police? And then if we should, or maybe should we have do you believe in reorganizing police departments if they have a track record of police abuse, like the scandal that Baltimore City had?
Reform is something that needs to be talked about more about reform. Defunding, no, that should be never a statement coming out of anybody's mouth, because it comes down to right now in every county in the city of Baltimore, but every county in our state, and our state troopers are already understaffed. Being in budget and tax and being part of public safety, I found this out talking to some of our commanders throughout the state. So we're already understaffed. And now they want to defund. I mean, the city of Baltimore already defunded $22 million when they have one of the worst homicide rates in our nation. So I just see that a cause to fear in the city. And I'm going to see which is going to be Democrat county executives pushing their authority saying that we need to defund when they need more funds, more police officers, and just a community involvement with that to make the difference.
Senator, we're obviously in an election year. You're running in an election, and unfortunately, so many decisions and so many things we see politicians doing right now, it has to have some relation to and be seen through the scope of how this relates to their elections coming up. And it always fascinates me, and it's a question I wanted to ask you, that you can't look across the country and see where this crime is taking place, where we're seeing these spikes in crime. Democrats can't really think calling for less policing, less law enforcement can actually be a winning issue on any of this, given what we see every night going on in cities across the country? What do you think is actually their end game here? Do they actually think this is a winning issue, or is there something else going on here by taking this stance?
There's something else going on here. As we know, there's funds going from a special group out there that's going to the Democratic Party. And see, a lot of people know this already, and it's causing more conflict because the more they're out there, the more funds that they get, the more funds that the Democratic Party will get. So they'll continue to so-called protest, but the bottom line is that all this violence and this continued violence, they know that they need help, and they will not give the support to our police officers. When you tell our police officers to stand down and they can't do their job, that is a major problem. So, throughout our whole nation, we see Portland, we see Chicago, we see New York, we see Baltimore, we see a lot of places throughout our nation. We have major problems, and those problems are Democratic dominated politicians, their council, their mayors, their governors that are making poor decisions for the protection and safety of their own people. And those things need to change. This is not a Democrat and a Republican or independent issue. It is a public safety issue for our constituents and our people. And we need to protect them better. And they need to let the police officers, they need to let our guard, they need to let all these people do their job and protect them.
So, Senator Salling, going off of that, I'm going to bring it back to Maryland for a second, and I want to talk about the Christopher Columbus statue, because that is something that I know you were very aware of because you were there. I saw you at the press conference with Delegate Kathy Schlega and Delegate Nina Mangione. What's going on in the legislature this upcoming session? I know pending your election, you may not be there, but are there bills that are already going to be proposed or being talked about, maybe on the Republican side, on how we're going to handle that, about just statues in general, or even something beyond that?
Yes, as I talked to Nina Mangione, the delegate and good friend, we talked about legislation, and if I'm back in Annapolis, which I hope to be in DC, of course, but if I am, I'm going to be working with him to cross-file that bill to promote and get other people involved in this bill that are important to our history. It's about our history. People want to destroy our great history in America. And I keep on saying, whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's our history and we learn from it. So, yeah, we want to protect those things like the statues and other areas. What they did to POF, FOP and the building there. There's history right there with our falling officers and what they did there. So, we got to protect these areas. And the only way we can do that is through legislation. And he knows I'm backing him 100%. And we'll support this legislation to make sure this will never happen again.
That's awesome. We're just getting started here with Senator Salling. We're going to be right back after a short break here on Voice of Young Republicans TV on Voice of Republicans.
Welcome back to Voice of Young Republicans. I'm here with Senator Johnny Ray Salling, who's running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. Senator, so to get back into things, last week, the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, joined the rioters to try and show his support. He was heckled, he was shouted at, he was driven away from the protest. In your dealings with Democrat colleagues, is there some behind the scenes willingness to admit that sometimes appeasing groups doesn't do enough to satisfy them?
Well, I tell you, these are so-called appeasing groups. We seen, as you said, we saw the problem, and he went out there on his own foolishly. You got to really assess before you think you can just go out to a situation like that thinking everything's going to be okay. I would not do that, and I'll tell you why. I think people take advantage of that, and they take advantage of him. He got gas, but you just can't do that. You need more than security. And the people that are out there don't care about you or about me or about you if you are a mayor or you're the president. They don't care. And so, you just got to be cautious in making those type of decisions. I love to see some of my colleagues that I talk with and I deal with constantly, whether in my committee or not, and see if they could support some of the things that we could push through, and making sure that people like this that are aggressive, that are angry, that are being violent. Bottom line, they're being violent. They're breaking the law, and we need to make them realize. I think the conversation's got to be, how can we talk about this and reason with each other? I think we have some commonalities, but I think at the same time, I think we got to work through them and reason with one another. And I think we can come to a place that Democrats and Republicans realize we can't have this in our nation, and we got to work it out in a way where we just need to stop it and sit down and reason and talk it out.
Yeah, no, I think talking it out is something that we don't do enough of, because I think a lot of problems can be handled if we can be discussed and worked out if we can just talk to each other. And unfortunately, our country is going in a direction where I don't see that as often, and it's a little disheartening for sure. I'm going to change topics and we're going to switch over to the economy. Yeah. So, the Paycheck Protection Program is estimated to have saved over 3 million jobs since its inception. But there's also concerns that some of those larger recipients of those funds, it's taken away from small business owners that could have used that money. If you're elected to Congress, Senator Salling, when you take office, while we're dealing with, you'll be taking office while we're dealing with the post-COVID world, hopefully, and the public health response to this. What further action would you take to prioritize helping small business owners that may have been affected by this pandemic?
Just to let you know, I've been talking with business owners throughout the district and throughout the area. And I've talked to some of my budget and tax partners that we work together. And what I want to do more than anything now is I want to help out our businesses by giving them tax breaks. As you know, throughout the year, they got to pay taxes on the property. And so we got to find ways where we can make a lesser burden and a lesser blow of all the problems that they have right now for not having business. I think one way we can do that is cut the tax back on that. Cut, if it's 50% or whatever percent it can be, we want to do all that we can to cut back a tax for them in their small business. And that would help them out tremendously. I've been told that already by many businesses that we can work that out. So I think it's one thing we can do. I think we also need to find ways where we can help them to extend themselves. If we can find ways where we can, like, for instance, what happened today. Our governor made a statement that, everything that we do now, we got to be, if we're outside, we got to wear a mask in public areas and things like that, where we already know that the businesses inside and outside that have the restaurants, they've extended themselves. We got to find other ways where we can help them out in ways where they can sell more. Restaurants, bars, restaurants, businesses that are out there. We just got to find ways where we can help them out. They are in the business and they are smarter than us. So we need to go to them, talk to them, and find out ways that they know where we can help them out and apply them accordingly. I think if we do things like that and lessen the tax, I think it would be a great help.
Yeah, no, the tax breaks, I think, are one of the, in my opinion, I think they're one of the most effective, because that puts the money back into their pocket. That's their money. And it's less of the government going into their pockets and making them have to reach a little deeper.
And
so
I'm sorry. And they can take that money to invest right back in their business. That's good.
Absolutely. So, Senator, with the deadline for so many kids going back to school now, or some rather the school year starting up again, how do you feel about the president's wish to have all schools open up immediately this fall? I know Governor Hogan has talked about doing it, letting the county executives kind of make their own decisions. And we've seen schools go, whether it's the hybrid approach, all online, some are going back into the classrooms. We've seen actually all three scenarios unfold in Maryland. There's private schools that are going back in 5 days a week. There's some doing the hybrid, and then some of the public schools are doing hybrid and some are doing just it all online. What's your take on this?
I would work with the president. The reason why is that I think kids today, as they know by number and by percent, are less susceptible to give it to an adult, this COVID-19. And they've proven this medically and through science. And just knowing that, I think we should not constantly do what we've been doing, which hasn't been working. Our immune systems fight this more than anything else, as a lot of people know, and doctors know this. And so what we need to do is we need to work outside the box. I think we can be more responsible of being 6 feet apart. I think if the kids can go back to school and wear a mask, I think that'd be fine. I think the teachers are excited for our kids to go back to school. But at the same time, I see things changing altogether. And what I mean by that is that, you know, kids that used to ride the bus, I think moms or dads are going to be driving to school. I think some of the moms and dads are picking right now to homeschool. I think that's changed. So the numbers are going to change, I think, in many ways. Your private schools are not under that. Private schools can open. So they're going to be doing that. And I know some of the private schools right now, they're going to open back up, and they do everything responsibly as the state told them to. They have places where they can wash their hands. They have places where they're 6 feet apart, measured out. So I think we can learn by our private schools, and we can achieve a whole lot more. So we can open up our schools for our kids, and I think we can get back to where we were, but it all won't be normal. It'll be different. But in time, we'll get back to where we used to.
Yeah, it's honestly, so it's interesting. So the whole school reopening thing, one of the private schools that's near me is actually going back 5 days a week. They've installed UV light bulbs that will be left on at night to clean the classrooms, which is like something like very scientifically, it's a brand new kind of thing. So I'll be curious to see if that works. And I know my high school is actually going back with a hybrid approach where the students will be, they'll be going into the classroom 2 days a week on Monday through Thursday. So half the students will be there on either Monday and Wednesday, and then the other half will be there Tuesday, Thursday. And then all Friday, all of the students will be virtual. But the students that aren't in the classroom that day will have to obviously tune in over Zoom to keep up with the lessons. I actually think that with that approach, I personally, think that's a good approach for the simple fact of if you can do it, absolutely, because it keeps your students engaged. And we saw some counties, I know my home county was one of the last counties to actually give their students work this past spring. And we saw students that were falling behind and they were not engaging with their teachers, and it affects our students in the long run. And unfortunately, some of these schools, we've got kids that rely on things like the school lunches that they get and the programs that the schools offer to give them some sort of purpose, but B, give them the education that every child deserves. So it's good to hear that you want to work with the president on that regarding this issue, because I do think there's not a cut and dry answer with this. And I know as more things come out, it's certainly going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting because the state has given the counties the authority to make those decisions. And like, for instance, when they can start before or after Labor Day, which I think it would be smart for every county in the city start after Labor Day to give them more time to make their decisions that they need to make. And I mean, North Carolina is already back at school and they're in school. It's different from North Carolina to Maryland, which we know, than Baltimore. And at the same time, there's difference in counties. Montgomery County, Prince George's County, the city of Baltimore County, they're different compared to Frederick County, Kent County, other counties, Garrett. Their numbers are drastically different. So they can make different decisions for different counties. And I think they'll be the right ones to.
Yeah. Well, Senator Salling, we appreciate you for joining us tonight. I want to give you the last word. If anyone wants to get in touch with you or your campaign wants to help, if you want to let everyone know how they can get in contact with you, make a donation, whatever they can do to help you.
Well, as you know, I'm running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District against Dutch Rubelsberger. We need somebody to work with the people, work and be a show up to the people and with the people. You can get on sallingforcongress.com and everything's there. I have a Facebook also. I have Antidote, so Antidote that is, and you can donate through that. it would be a great help to me. If you need to know anything or volunteers on there, you can volunteer. The list is there. And at the same time, we're going to let you know some of our events that are going to be coming up. We're hoping that we can have a fundraiser with a good friend, Bob Early. So we're looking forward to that. We had a council one earlier in the year because of COVID, but we do have a lot of things going on. If you want signs, give me a call. If not, go on my Facebook again and my website, and we'll be happy to come out. And we need to take this seat. We need to get the House back, and the president knows that I want to work with him. So I thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to be a congressman.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Salling, and we definitely wish you all the best for running in the 2nd Congressional District, because it's not an easy race by far. We have a lot of Democrat incumbents here in Maryland that are in Congress that have been there for a very long time. So thank you for joining us this week. Thank you for everyone that joined us this week on the Voice of the Young Republicans show. I'm Maria Sophia, and thank you for tuning in to Voice of Republicans TV. We'll see you next week. Thanks.